It's strange how the universe sometimes forces you to confront the truth in the most unexpected ways. For me, that moment came during my regular morning commute, listening to a local relationship advice podcast that had become part of my daily routine. I never imagined that one episode would completely shatter the foundation of my 12-year marriage. Love, Life, and Everything Between had been my favorite podcast for months. The host, Dr. Jennifer Mitchell, had this soothing voice and practical approach to relationship problems that made her advice feel accessible and real. I'd even recommended the show to several friends, praising how she handled complex relationship issues with such grace and understanding. That particular morning started like any other. I was stuck in traffic, sipping my coffee, and starting the latest episode titled, When Love Gets Complicated. Dr. Mitchell's guest was anonymous. As always, she never revealed real names to protect her caller's privacy. But 20 minutes into the episode, my coffee cup nearly slipped from my hand. I knew that voice. The slight southern drawl, the nervous laugh, the way certain words were emphasized. It was David, my husband. At first, I tried to convince myself I was imagining things. Surely there were other men who sounded similar. But then he mentioned details that were impossible to ignore. He talked about being married for 12 years, about his wife's recent promotion that had her traveling more frequently, about their shared love of hiking in the mountains. Each detail was like a puzzle piece clicking into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. He spoke about feeling disconnected, about finding unexpected connection with someone else, someone who understood him in ways his wife supposedly didn't, someone who had become more than just a friend. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter as I realized he was talking about Dr. Mitchell herself. Their story unfolded through his careful words and her professional responses, though I could hear the undertones of intimacy in their interaction. They had met at a broadcasting conference 6 months ago, where David was representing his advertising agency. What started as a professional consultation about podcast advertising had evolved into coffee meetings, then dinners, and eventually something more. The worst part was listening to Dr. Mitchell offer relationship advice while knowing she was the other woman. She maintained her professional demeanor, asking probing questions about his feelings, his marriage, his doubts, but I could hear it now, the subtle warmth in her voice when she addressed him, the way she seemed to lean into his responses. How had I missed these signs in previous episodes? Traffic came to a standstill, and I found myself parked on the highway, tears streaming down my face as I continued listening. David described feeling torn between his loyalty to our marriage and his growing feelings for someone who truly saw him. Dr. Mitchell guided the conversation skillfully, never revealing their personal connection, maintaining the facade of professional distance while discussing the very relationship that was destroying my marriage. I started binge listening to old episodes during my lunch break, picking up on things I'd missed before. There were subtle references to situations I recognized, carefully disguised stories about our marriage. In one episode, he talked about a fight we'd had over missing our anniversary dinner due to my work emergency. In another, he discussed his reservations about starting a family, something we'd been planning to do this year. The podcast had become their own private confession booth, a place where they could discuss their affair under the guise of seeking professional advice. Each episode felt like a new betrayal, with David sharing intimate details of our life while Dr. Mitchell played the role of impartial counselor. What haunted me most was realizing how many people had listened to these episodes, unknowingly witnessing the unraveling of my marriage. The comment sections were filled with listeners offering support and advice, some encouraging him to follow his heart, others urging him to work on his marriage. They had turned my personal tragedy into public entertainment. I spent the next week documenting everything. I downloaded episodes, transcribed relevant sections, and tracked the timeline of their relationship through the podcast's archive. Each episode became evidence, each shared story another confession. The irony wasn't lost on me. A relationship advice podcast had become the chronicle of my husband's infidelity. The confrontation happened on a Sunday evening. I waited until David was in his home office, supposedly preparing for the upcoming work week. I connected my phone to our home speakers and played clips from various episodes. His voice filled our house, confessing his feelings for another woman, while Dr. Mitchell's smooth, professional responses followed. I watched the color drain from his face as he recognized his own words. The carefully constructed walls between his two lives came crumbling down in an instant. He tried to explain, to justify, but how could he deny what was recorded in his own voice, broadcast for thousands to hear? The truth spilled out in a torrent of confessions. The affair had started emotionally, through long conversations about relationships and personal growth. Dr. Mitchell had fascinated him with her insights, her understanding, her ability to see beneath the surface. The physical aspect had come later, but by then, the emotional connection was already deep-rooted. The podcast had been her idea, a way for him to process his feelings while maintaining their professional facade. She had convinced him it would be therapeutic, a way to work through his guilt while keeping their relationship hidden. What they hadn't counted on was me being a loyal listener. The divorce proceedings were surreal. My lawyer found the podcast episodes particularly useful. It's not often that evidence of infidelity comes with timestamps and public distribution. David moved out within weeks, and I later heard that he and Dr. Mitchell had made their relationship public, though she had to step back from her podcast amid the controversy. The hardest part was losing not just my husband, but also a source of comfort I had come to rely on. The podcast that had once been my daily companion now felt tainted. Each episode I had enjoyed took on new meaning, knowing that behind the professional advice and soothing voice was someone who had been instrumental in destroying my marriage. Months later, I received an email from Dr. Mitchell's producer, asking if I would be interested in sharing my side of the story on a special episode about the impact of infidelity. The irony was almost too much to bear. I declined, but kept the email as a reminder of how thoroughly my private life had been transformed into public discourse. Sometimes, I still catch myself reaching for my phone during my morning commute, muscle memory trying to play the latest episode of a podcast I no longer trust. Those moments serve as reminders of how easily what we think we know can be upended, how the voices we invite into our lives can harbor hidden agendas. The experience has changed how I view relationship advice in general. Every expert opinion, every seemingly wise counsel now comes with questions about the advisor's own integrity. It's a harsh lens to view the world through, but perhaps a necessary one. Today, I've found new podcasts to fill my mornings, though I'm more cautious about the voices I choose to trust. The betrayal I experienced has become part of who I am, but it doesn't define me. Instead, it's taught me to listen more carefully, not just to the words people say, but to the truths hidden between them. If you've ever discovered betrayal in an unexpected way, or if your trust has been broken by someone you looked up to, know that you're not alone. Sometimes the most painful discoveries lead us to deeper wisdom and stronger boundaries. Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might help others who are struggling with similar discoveries. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more real-life relationship stories and hit that notification bell to stay updated on new uploads. Together, we can learn from each other's experiences and grow stronger through sharing our truths, no matter how painful they might be. Thank you for listening to my story. May it remind you to trust your instincts and remember that sometimes the truth comes to us through the most unexpected channels.